Welcome to another LUMOplay Motion Maker tutorial. Today we are creating the Travel the World interactive wall. And I'm going to break down some of the design decisions, what are all the art assets that are needed, and then we're going to build it. And let's take a look at exploring traveling the world. Let's break down the design into two categories. One is on the topic itself, which is travel. So you can see the overlay graphic has travel the world. It's a clear message. It presents the theme in a bold way. And then when you interact with the floor, you can see that all the little particle images are versions of the word hello in multiple languages, and you have a globe underneath. So really, it's a combination of these images that are brought together to tell this story of traveling the world. The technical aspects are interesting as well. As you can see, travel the world is a very bold, clear message, and the contrast against the small little hellos behind it, that's a contrast in scale. And if you look at the little hellos behind it as well, you can see that is creating a texture and pattern, and that texture and that pattern is also a contrast against the big, bold, circular idle image. And it's also a big contrast to the big, bold globe. So you can see that there's layers of texture that is also creating a separation. And then there's the colors, the bold colors against the black, the blue against all the bright oranges and yellows and light blues. All of these contrasts are making the design stand out. Let's take a look at all the art assets, and then we're going to dive in and build this. So here we are in Photoshop, and you can see we have the Travel the World idle graphic here. And it's a PNG file, and you'll notice the checkers in the background. That's letting you know that that's transparent. And the reason why we want this to be a PNG file is that PNGs save that transparency. It's often called an alpha channel. So that's the first thing you need, is to find that bold graphic. It's very clear, it's a nice strong message, and it connects to the topic or event that you're doing. And then let's look at the particle images. And the particle images are these little messages, little bonjour, little these little like moments that are really emphasizing the topic of travel and the different cultures and places in the world. And they are also have alpha channels or transparency in PNG files. And you notice that they're very colorful. Now you can create your own graphics, or you can go to stock photo places and get them. And then finally you have this background image, and it's amazing how these relatively static images that we're showing you create this really dynamic, scattering, fun, playful, interactive experience. Why don't we jump into the Motion Maker template and start building together these layers that create this really dynamic experience. Here we are at the LUMOplay Maker, and I've jumped to the Motion Maker tab here, and let's dive into some templates. And as you can see, the template we will be exploring today is the scatter template. So why don't we click on Create? And why don't we know this is going to be called Travel the World, so let's name it. And now let's start building out the experience. Now, right out of the hop, you can see the concept that we are going to replace some of these images, and let's start out with particles first. So I'm going to clear these out. And let's find these particle images. And here we are. You can start seeing the beginnings of Travel the World. And you'll notice that the images are a little large. So let's change the particle size. And here you can do a lot of things with the particles. So, you know, the smaller they are, kind of a different kind of texture it gives the feel, right? It's the patterns of it all together create a texture. And there's something really neat about how that's contrasted against that big overlay image that we're going to bring in later. Also, you can see that maybe the spacing could be a little tighter. So you can move this spacing. And as you can see, this gets the spacing wider. You know, move it down, it gets a little bit closer. And yeah, that maybe there, that's starting to feel pretty cool. Maybe that's a little tight. If we change the size variation a bit, we get, you know, a little bit more variety. And so it's this whole nuancing of the spacing and the size variation. You know, then there's this element here of the particle speed. So how quickly it just, you know, I'll bring it all the way down and you can see that's with no speed. It's just basically you're kind of creating jitters. And then you bring the speed all the way up and it's just flying really fast. Now, why you want this to look a certain way, it really depends. So what I like is I like to imagine what the path of the experience that's left behind. My childlikeness wants to create paths. So for me, having a certain speed needs to create that path. And also there's that reveal that happens underneath. That is, you know, that's where there's a surprise that's underneath it all. And so really you start understanding your motivation and also the aesthetic of how it moves and comes back is, you know, also very personal. So that's, you know, there's you know, probably a, you know, an optimal design and there's a very personal way of looking at it. And so I bring both of those when I think about design. And let's go into the particle return delay. So it comes back really quick. Let's crank that up a bit. Now that means they kind of hang out at the end a little bit more before they come back. And what's kind of cool about that allows the surprise underneath to exist a little longer. It also changes, like when people figure out how that works, then it actually changes the behavior of the players, because they know if they run around all the time and it does that little pause, well, they will stop and want to watch it come back. Or so there's all sorts of fun things when you're testing the floors. These little settings can change the way people interact with the floor. So I like this. I feel like the particles feel right. Let's move into the background and I'm going to open up, go to the background image. And this image is just going to sit here in the background. It's the reveal. And we don't have to do anything more with that. Before we do the overlay, I want to do one more thing. And I love this aspect of the scatter template. This idle animation, wave speed. It's a really neat thing. I'm gonna crank it up so you can really see it. So I'm gonna turn the speed all the way up. And see what it's there's a wave that's pulsating that's starting from one end of the screen and it's pulsating through the other side, and it's going really fast in this case. So if I slow it down, you can start seeing, you can almost imagine like it's a wave of like an ocean wave kind of crashing through it, kind of pushing the animation up and down. And the scale of the wave, so there's the bigger scale of the wave. You can kind of feel that more oceany kind of vibe. Maybe I'll slow it down. Right now, the thing is, that has a really, it really adds a lot of energy to the piece, especially when you're looking at it on the wall or on the floor. And so this is a really fun part of this template that is a lot of fun to play with. And, maybe you want to be more subtle with the speed. It also allows the scaling of those particles to go up and down, which creates a really dynamic element. It's just a really neat animation. I really like it. All right, I like this. So then finally, let's get our overlay, and we're gonna add, it's an idle image, meaning it actually itself has a little bit of animation on it as well. But let's bring the alpha, or its transparency, all the way up so you can see it. And it already has this pulsating kind of movement, and it just adds to this whole vibe of the whole piece. It looks a little bit nicer if it's a little bit transparent, blends everything together. And I think here we have a really nice travel the world interactive wall that you could design for your classroom or for an event, and it really has a strong message. The theme is strong throughout it, and you can see how the blend of scale and texture and color are all brought together to share this message. So thank you for stopping by and exploring this Travel the World tutorial. I'm excited to see what you make.